No Netflix and chill, no Pornhub, no Spotify, no annoying relatives trying to get a hold of you. 3 days without internet. Guess what country I am talking about? My name is Pavlo, and I'll tell you what you could have missed. Belarus is going through a major crisis right now, and some of you may say, well, Pavlo, it's 2020, everybody's going through a major crisis. Have you seen outside? I'll explain. So, people in Belarus are going at an extra major crisis right now. And some of you may think that walrus and Belarus are just maybe some different species of marine mammals, but that is not correct. Bit of a background. In 1991, Soviet Union, the bestest country in the world, has fallen apart into its original founding republics. From the 15 of them, currently, only a small number, maybe a half, are enjoying full democratic rights and freedoms. Alexander Lukashenko has been a president since 1994. I don't know what a porn star in Iran would have looked like in the 90s, but I imagine it would be something like this guy over here. So he has been in power for the last 26 years. Let me demonstrate how long that is. So let's take our heroes, Oksana and Vladimir, who were born in 1994 when our little munchkin has become a president. Look at those little red cheeks. Skip forward a bit, the year is 2000, they go to school their first year. Our whiskered uncle is still the president. Meanwhile, multiple opposition leaders have disappeared. Kidnapped, murdered, killed. I'll let you think of it. Year 2007, Oksana and Vladimir probably had their first kiss, learning to deal with the outbreaks on their face and other teenage stuff. Lukashenko is still drinking tea in the office. Meanwhile, anyone who gets popular enough to start a movement gets sent to prison. Year 2012. Vladimir and Oksana have finished high school. They starting their first year in university. Lukashenko is still a president. And the people, or anyone who doesn't support our grandpa over here, gets sent to prison or kidnapped. Nothing extraordinary. Same old. Year 2016, both of our heroes have finished university, started their first job, and now are dating. Meanwhile, European dictator is still in charge as the president. As always, any large gatherings, protests of even 20 people, it's enough to get you sent to prison, to jail, for re-educational purpose. Year is 2020, Vladimir and Oksana are welcoming their firstborn child into the world. Lukashenko is still a president, and he's holding his traditional presidential re-elections, where you vote for him or for him. So what is different this year? On one hand, we have older generation who have grown up with authoritarian and paternalistic rule in Soviet Union and is slowly passing away. On the other hand, we have an entire generation of young adults who have grown up in Belarus and knowing nobody else other than Lukashenko as their president. That generation is also the most internet savvy. They travel, they see what's going on around the world, the freedoms and rights they're missing out on. On top of that, Lukashenko has frustrated even his most loyal supporters with the way he handled coronavirus or the lack of handling, since he denied the very existence of coronavirus and didn't take it seriously until just recently.
Здесь нет вирусов никаких. Вот ты же не заметила, что они летают? И я тоже не вижу. Это холодильник.
And, people are just simply tired of looking at the same face for the 26 years, no matter how cute it is. In a nutshell, 3 of the main opposition leaders were either sent to jail or fled the country due to the fear for their life. So we have Babariko, who has fled, we have Tsepkalo, who has been sent to prison, and we also have Sergei Tikhanovsky, who was sent to prison as well. So seems kind of simple, right? Just put all of your opposition in prison and get the full vote. Sergei Tikhanovsky, who is currently in prison, has a wife, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. And she has registered to run as a president on her husband's behalf, so to speak, and generally unite the opposition. Since she is a woman, Lukashenko didn't take her seriously, and he also needed some kind of visibility for the opposition, so he allowed her to register. Long story short, she has received wide support among people in Belarus, which was not really reflected in the election. So if you believe Lukashenko's data, Lukashenko has received 80% of the vote, whereas she received only 10% of the vote. So let's put that aside. Seems like a very clear win for Lukashenko, right? Here's a fun fact. You are not allowed to gather any kind of data on political preferences in the country. So if at any point during this year you wanted to go out into the street and ask people, if an election were to be held today, who would you vote for? You would be put to jail because that is absolutely illegal, which kind of renders all this information rather untrustworthy, to say the least. On top of that, most of the journalists, if not all, were not allowed to cover the elections.
What are you doing? We don't do that here.
And they were definitely not allowed at the polling stations, including international observations and committees and whatnot. Well, since we cannot confirm political preferences inside the country, let's have a look at the outside, at the diaspora. So in Moscow, fellow dictatorship, 78% of the people have voted for Tikhanovskaya. That's right. Lukashenko only received 6% of the vote. In Berlin, the diaspora, 93% of people voted for Tikhanovskaya and only 1% voted for Lukashenko. Obviously, diaspora votes differently than, the majority of the country, and that's true for any country in the world. There's always some discrepancies here and there. But how do you explain 1% in Germany, 6% in Russia, and 80% inside the country? Very fucking suspicious. There has been massive, large reports of falsification across almost every single voting polling station. And maybe if he wanted to adjust it to something more reasonable, like 51%, people wouldn't be as pissed. But come on, 80% for this guy? Now, he's pissed because everybody says that he has a very small approval rating. He gathered 3% at an illegal internet poll by a newspaper where he was called Sasha 3%, which means Sasha 3%. Which brings us to the key point of the video. August 9th, 2020 was the day of the fair presidential elections in Belarus, and when the government has announced the preliminary results showing overwhelming support for Lukashenko, people took it to the streets to demand fair and real elections, absolutely peacefully. And it didn't take too long for police to show up in the riot gear and just start beating everybody up, as they like to do. And according to some reports, roughly 3,000 people were arrested on that night, and 100,000 people have escaped the sentencing because they just weren't caught. There wasn't enough police. On top of that, there was an internet shutdown. Skype, Viber, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, Telegram, you name it. Nothing was working, if working at all. The only way we were able to get information was from Telegram because they use some kind of advanced VPN traffic routing and some other abracadabra that's pretty technical, but it worked, at least for a few minutes during the day, enough to send the materials. Many people were severely injured. There were also reports of 2 men dying, and one of them was later actually confirmed. Meanwhile, the opposition candidate, Tikhanovskaya, was kidnapped inside the government building, Central Election Commission, where she was held against her will for 3 hours with no access to the outside world. So nobody knows who was present with her and what they were doing to her. But 3 hours later, after she was briefly released, she reached out to her lawyer, said, "I've made my choice," and then was again escorted by supposedly secret services, and then never heard from again. leaving everybody very confused as to what the hell is going on. Next morning, everybody in Belarus woke up to the news that she is safe and has escaped to the neighboring country of Lithuania. Now, here's the curious part. The same morning, a video of her emerged online where she was asking people to stop protesting and accept the fair and legitimate results of the vote of the presidential elections. Now, does that remind you of anything?
I'm begging for restraint and decency. The attack on the dam was a callous and inhuman act of destruction.
On a lighter note, some guy decided to pull a Tarzan and had nothing but a towel wrapped around his waistline and did a little performance for hundreds of police officers in the riot gear.
Кузьмич! Молодец! Кузьмич, молодец!
You fabulous piece of ass, Kuzmich. You're my hero. Mwah. So why is this important? You see, Belarus has never experienced protests of this scale in its entire history since it is a dictatorship, where you either go to prison, you get kidnapped, just brutally murdered in the middle of the night, or even broad daylight, or just flee the country. So how fucking frustrated and tired do you have to be to risk your life in a regime like this? I have nothing but love and support for people in Belarus and wish them all the luck they can have. Живе Belarus. So this is a trial format that I'll be doing every week, sort of news digest, where I cover politics, pop culture, anything that's going on in the world. And if there's some massive event taking place, such as this, dedicate an entire episode to it. So if you like this video and generally care about what's going on in the world, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow on Instagram to stay updated. Like this video, comment what you think about what's going on in Belarus, and maybe some ideas for the next video. And of course, it would help tremendously if you could share this video with your friends or on your social. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.